Behind the words of a book is the writer of the book and the reality of which he or she is writing, things seen and heard and experienced and felt and worried about. But what of our reality? What of this time in this country and things seen and heard out there among the young people of America today? With Martha Teichner now, we go behind the words of a novel to meet its writer and to hear what worries him.
Russell Banks is enjoying himself.
It doesn't take very long to get into the unconscious.
The game arcade in a shopping mall, one of the places Bone, the dropout kid in Banks's new novel, hangs out, trying to find himself.
I see it more as it's about control. You have no control over your life. You got no power. You got nothing. This is you can control these guys' movements. Control.
Control is what Russell Banks's books are about. His characters usually losing, but sometimes gaining control of their lives. Like Chappie Dorset, a.k.a. Bone, in The Rule of the Bone.
Anyhow, my life got interesting, you might say, the summer I turned 14 and was heavy into weed, but I didn't have any money to buy it with, so I started looking around the house all the time for things I could sell, but there wasn't much. My mother, who was still like my best friend
Bone
then,
gets kicked out of the house, hangs out at shopping malls, drifts from a sleazy apartment he shares with some bikers to a wrecked school bus junked in a field, and ends up going off to Jamaica with a Rastafarian drug dealer. The book is actually about adults, but as this particular kid observes them.
I didn't go to jail for it or anything, but I think of the time I got caught shoplifting at the lingerie store up at the Champlain Mall in Plattsburgh as the true beginning of my life of crime.
The odyssey of this mall rat with his nose rings and mohawk is intended as a moral commentary, an indictment of how adult America alienates its children.
I started looking around and seeing kids like this hanging out at the malls and living in little, apartments or in trailers and sometimes in cars with each other, setting up surrogate families. In The Bone, the name he takes for himself, was really just one of those kind of kids to me. His voice started coming to me very early on, that kind of flat, uninflected, affectless, wry, ironic, to me, very funny voice. I like my grandmother and always have since I was a little kid, but I never really know what she's thinking. Part of it is she doesn't know either. Also, she plucks her eyebrows off and then draws in new ones with a pencil or a special crayon the way she'd want them to look in a fashion magazine, which is way up high on her forehead practically, like she's stuck in a state of cute permanent surprise. So most of the time you actually can't read her expression.
It is very Russell Banks that the critical turning point in his book takes place in a tattoo parlor, when the kid in the story gets a tattoo and with it, a new name, The Bone.
It's a moment where he's first beginning to claim authority for himself and take over control of his own life. And the only thing he's really got any control over is his body.
So how did you do your research?
I was afraid you'd get into that. Hanging out at Mad Pups in Plattsburgh, New York.
And
I eventually got a tattoo. You can't hang out in a tattoo parlor very long without getting a tattoo.
You see it?
Yeah, I'm just going to deny it afterwards, though, and claim it's a temporary. Yeah. My mother will never forgive me for this.
This, too, seems very Russell Banks. He smokes in exile on the back steps of his house in Princeton, New Jersey. Here kept company by his daughter Maya and his wife, poet Chase Twitchell. In his writing and sometimes his life, Russell Banks has lurked at the edges.
I do end up writing about marginalized people, people who perceive themselves and are pretty much perceived as outside the mainstream, wanting to get in, or having failed that, trying to figure out how to live outside.
Russell Banks' books share the territory of country western songs, the world of trailer parks and debt-plagued people barely hanging on.
It's as if I were entering a dream, almost, where everything is significant, where the fall of light or the bark of a dog or the slam of a door has a kind of archaic resonance for me, and it happens to be in these kinds of lives that I've written about. I mean, that's when I want to write about them. It all looks very important to me. Someone passing by wouldn't see anything. It's kind of boring, kind of dreary. But to me, there's a kind of magical importance to it.
It is the world he grew up in and escaped, except in his books.
And I like Daniel's introduction because it was so personal. I mean, in terms of...
A professor at Princeton University, he teaches one semester a year, then goes back home to upstate New York, where he can reconnect with the complicated past that feeds his writing.
Tell me about the hat.
Well, it's what my father left me. It's my inheritance in a way, and I really do think of it that way. But he died in 1979, and had been a working man, a plumber, all his life, and this is really what he had to pass along, and a hard hat and a hard hat mentality, I think. I mean, he was in the family until I was 12, and then my mother and father split, and he essentially abandoned us, and he was no longer a person in the family. He was alcoholic, and a violent man, and I learned very, very on to deal with him in the most guarded fashion, and I never got over that.
The result? 4 marriages, an outsider attitude, a rocky road to the 12 books he's written that his fans now bring to book signings in piles.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed your talk.
Russell Banks says that over the years he's been domesticated, not tamed. But he's made it to the celebrity book tour circuit, is reviewed well in A-list publications, and 3 of his novels are about to be made into movies, including the best-known, Continental Drift, which began with a newspaper clipping.
There was a story about a boatman, a white American boatman who was smuggling Haitians in and had been hailed by a Coast Guard cutter and in a panic had thrown the Haitians off the boat, most of whom had drowned, and he took off. And I knew, because I had lived in the Caribbean and I knew how desperate people's lives could be, that they would put their lives in the hands of a man like this. And I also knew, because of my own family background and my own experiences, I knew how a white American man could get so desperate that he would take chances like that, too. So the 2 stories immediately came together for me out of this one newspaper clipping.
In the noisy glare of Miami's Little Haiti, he brings together the lives of the boat captain and the one Haitian who survived in a reckoning of race and redemption.
I'm operating out of a belief that all lives are interconnected and that we're all implicated in each other's fates in significant ways and bear terrible responsibilities toward and for each other, most of which we abandon and run from, but I believe it.
From a man who is not religious, it is a religious view. On a continent adrift from its morals, Russell Banks is a moralist.
Good cheer and mournfulness over lives other than our own, even wholly invented lives. No, especially wholly invented lives. Deprive the world as it is of some of the greed it needs to continue to be itself. Sabotage and subversion, then, are this book's objectives. Go, my book, and help destroy the world as it is.